You are listening to When Life Gives You Lemons, the podcast that speaks to high-performing individuals who have been through adversity but come back stronger. I'm your host, Emma Levy, a physiotherapist who has helped elite athletes on their way to Olympic success. This podcast was born following my own trauma when I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of just 36. Sat in the chemo chair, I set myself the goal of starting a podcast to explore resilience and the importance of mindset. During this Olympic special mini-series, I will be speaking to some of the Team GB athletes and support staff who will be travelling to Paris for the Olympics and the Paralympic Games this summer. I aim to delve into how it truly feels to represent your country, the training, the build-up, the pressures associated with that, and how these guys are preparing for the biggest stage in the sporting world. Today, I'm welcoming Zak Skinner to the podcast. Zak is a part of the Paralympic athletics team representing Team GB in long jump and 100 metres. Zak was born with a genetic condition which affects his vision, thereby placing him in the T13 classification. Paris will be his second Paralympic Games, having reached the finals in both events in Tokyo 2021. Since then, despite experiencing ups and downs of injuries, he has achieved great things in his sport. He is a world bronze medalist and double European para-gold medalist in both the 100 metres and the long jump. He is now aiming for the podium in Paris. Zak, it is great to speak to you today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I feel quite hyped up now after that. I want to get back to training.
Excellent. I was going to ask you, how is your training going? Because there's not long to go now.
Yeah, it's we're nearly within 10 weeks, so it all feels very real now. Not that it didn't feel real before, but it's definitely like being a bit of a creeper, and now suddenly it's just like straight here. But no, training's been going well. Again, it's been another year without with its challenges and injuries and training. We're in a good place now. We've managed to get through a lot of work and bounce back from setbacks. So I think for me now, it's just the business end. It's the most exciting part of the year. So I'm just excited to take it on, to be honest.
Excellent. And you've had some, is it hamstring injuries in the past?
Yeah. So I've basically for the last 4 years, I've torn my hamstring most years. And then this year I actually split my patella tendon about 2 or 3 months ago. So it's a hard sport. And I think because we push ourselves to such a limit and it's such an intense sport that injuries are sort of inevitable. And unfortunately, I've been quite unlucky with the amount and the repetitiveness of it. But it's a hard thing to bounce back from. But I'm grateful for sort of me and my team that helped me get through it.
Cool. Are you back training fully now?
Yeah, back training fully and competed in the 100 already. And then we'll be opening up my long jump season in about 2 weeks.
Amazing. Can I ask you about your visual impairment?
Yeah.
Tell me, were you born, I read that you were born with no vision at all. Is that correct?
Yeah. So ocular albinism is quite a rare condition. There's not many. Growing up, I only knew one other person, and I don't think I know anyone else personally that has the condition apart from me and my family. So yeah, I was born with no sight, and my sight slowly developed until about the age of 2. And then at 2 years old, it's basically stayed stable. The condition itself basically just means that my eyes are severely underdeveloped. So there's a lack of cells and lack of cell development in my eye, which then therefore leads to lack of vision. There's a lot of varying eye conditions with Stargardt's, retinitis pigmentosa, which can all affect it in slightly different ways. But for me, it's just my visual acuity, which is mainly affected. Now, visual acuity is just the way you see. It's a posh way of saying basically how clear your vision is. And mine is just severely impacted by ocular albinism.
So when you're competing, when you're doing the long jump, do you see the white board that you jump off?
No. So when I'm standing at the back of the runway about to start, I can barely make out the pit, let alone the long jump board, which has proven it to have its own challenges. But I think the interesting thing about sort of having a visual impairment in general, especially when you're born with it. I mean, a lot of people actually lose their sight. Is I have actually no comparison. I don't know how well you guys see. So for me, this is crystal clear, and you guys are just all superheroes. Like, I don't. Sometimes the things that you guys are able to see is just completely mind blowing to me. So I think I'm lucky in the sense that I don't know any different. For me, this is just normal. So it's always, I think, maybe a little bit easier to adapt and just develop what you can do.
Yeah. So how do you know when to take off in long jump? Is it a matter of counting your steps?
Yeah. It sounds really simple, but I just have 20 strides and I work on the rhythm and the consistency of those until the cows come home, and just hope that when I get to the 20th, I am behind that foul line.
Yeah. And the people in your classification, they all have similar visual impairments or different degrees of what they can and can't see?
Yeah. So in my classification, everyone will be deemed within a certain bracket. In disabilities, no one is the same. So there's always going to be some sort of bracket of sort of the top end and the lower end. But these are obviously very much smaller margins compared to the grand scheme of things because of the amount of classes that are there. In visual impairment classes, it's either two things. It can be your visual acuity, which is obviously where I fall in, or the other one can be visual field. So something like tunnel vision. So some athletes may have that, but they're both, everyone that's classified is deemed to have the same level of impairment.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your siblings also have visual impairments. Is that right? Because it's a genetic condition.
Yes.
Did they all have it, or was there just some of you?
So it's a bit of a unique condition in the sense of I believe it's only passed on in females. And so it's a bit of a weird allele or genetic condition in that sense. So me and my twin brother are the most severely impacted by it. And I mean, growing up, we had support staff in classes, we had vision aids, etc. We were definitely more significantly disabled compared to the average person. And then my older brother was tested once they found out about us, and he also has it, but to a way less degree. He has the same condition, but his sight is significantly better than ours.
Yeah. So growing up with a disability, was that challenging? Did you feel different? Were things difficult at school, or was it just it's all you've ever known, like you said, and there was no problems?
No, it definitely, I think it's the most difficult time period of my disability was probably during secondary school. I mean, at primary school, sometimes you think you're cool because you're the odd one out and you're getting all this special treatment. And then you go through your like adolescence of wanting to be independent and rebel, and you realize you can't. And it is tough because our vision is so bad. We required so much support. So we were always involved in sort of special educational needs departments. I had support staff that came into lessons, which when you're 15, 16 at secondary school, you don't really want some teacher to come in and help support you. We'd always had help with exams and etc. But I think like the most difficult thing to overcome with this sort of impairment is you're never going to be fully independent. Like, I'm never going to be able to drive unless Elon Musk sorts me out some self-driving car. And that is just so difficult to get through, I think, especially when your friends all start driving, passing their tests and doing all the things which you can't do. And there's no way around it. Like, I think we had such great parents that just pushed us into everything, but they weren't going to push us in the driving seat and go drive.
No, not so sensible.
Yeah. And it is tough. I mean, everyone has their difficulties growing up with insecurities and challenges, and we were unfortunately dealt the hand of also having a disability. So I can't sugarcoat it in the way that it was fine and easy, but we had great people around us, great friends, and a great family that supported us through that.
And do you think it was some of those challenges that maybe led you into sport, or how did you get into athletics?
Yeah, I think the athletics is so I'd never done I'd never done any disability sport. I'd always just been pushed into sport able-bodied, and I wouldn't even call it able-bodied sport. I didn't even know that I was not able-bodied. And we played rugby, we played everything. We're very active children. And then I kind of fell in love with athletics through just school. I just went to like a local, like a school lunchtime club, and really enjoyed athletics. Then joined my local club. And it was only when I got to my local club and was explaining how, oh, by the way, I can't see, I might need some assistance with X, Y, and Z. They were like, have you ever thought about the Paralympics or being involved in parasport? And I was like, no, never crossed my mind ever. And that then went to go get classified, went to an induction day. We realized it was something that I'm classifiable and eligible for. And really from there, it just came on and on and on. And I think when you're really competitive and you find something which you can be good at, you just really want to get better and better at it. So that was kind of the spark that happened for me.
This episode is sponsored by Recovery from Joint Operations. They are a premier supplier of bracing and cold compression solutions and the only bracing provider able to supply the highest quality knitted supports, complemented by a full range of framed braces. They offer a solution at every step, from elite sport to surgical recovery, and all of the products come with full clinical support and advice. As a physiotherapist, I've seen these in action at the Olympic Games in Paris and can personally highly recommend these products. Get in touch for more information. The website is in the show notes. And like, you do the 100 meter and long jump because to be the best at one event wasn't enough.
Yeah, maybe that's my ego trying to take over me, just want to do more. But yeah, I think it was just purely because I could be competitive in both, and because they're sort of in the sense of two events that complement each other, they can work. And I think I just wanted to be competitive in both. I gave them both a go. Long jump was always the one I was the best, better at, and still is my main event. Still is the one I've won world medals at compared to the 100 meters. But the hamstring has definitely caused a lot of issues with my 100 in the last 2 or 3 years. So this year is definitely more making a return back to that, and I hope I can be on the world stage in both of those in my career.
Are you aiming for the podium on both?
Yeah, I think that is the mentality you have to have. I think you have to. I would never go into a competition thinking I can't win. Otherwise, I wouldn't go. Like that's the way I have to attack it. I think if you also have to be realistic, and realistically, I'm going to win the long jump, and I would like to place in the 100. But I think it all comes down to the day, and I like myself to be that competitor on the day.
Which one comes first?
So 100 meters is first, and then long jump is about 3 or 4 days later.
Okay, so you just got to make sure you don't injure your hamstring in the 100 meters.
Yeah, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that because that's been in the back of my mind.
Sorry, I should switch the physio brain off, shouldn't I?
Yeah. No, we've done it. We're well conditioned. We're going to be fine.
You'll be fine. If you've done it before, if that's what you do every competition, both events, you're conditioned for it, aren't you?
Yeah, and we've gone to championships before where we haven't taken that risk, and I think we're in a good place to not be taking that risk again. If something was to happen, we would just focus on the long jump, and that's the event I've won medals in, had more success in. So, and that's the one I want to. That's the one I really am going for the gold.
You mentioned rugby, and I read that your dad was the well-known England rugby player Zak Skinner.
Yeah.
And you played rugby as a kid.
Yeah.
Would you think there was pressure to get into sport because of your dad's sporting history?
No, I really don't. And it's strange because I feel like there probably was, but we never felt it. And it was kind of like a strange one because obviously we grew up I only started athletics until when I was about 16. So I played rugby from the age of 9. And like when you turn up to rugby with your dad, who actually was like the player of all of our other dads' ages, he was always like, people were always asking for photos and stuff like that, and that never really translated into our performance. I think we were I maybe felt the pressure to be a better rugby player than I did to actually be an elite sport. I never felt the pressure to be an elite sport. I thought maybe I should have just been better at rugby. If anything, it's just helped me now that I've come to the professional side of sport to have someone that's been there and done it.
Yeah, I'm sure. But when you were playing rugby, was it a challenge to like catch the ball due to your vision impairment?
I just ignored that part of the game. I literally just was like, don't bother passing it because I'm not going to catch it. And I just focused on the things I could do, which was just tackle. And I was a flanker like my dad. So basically, don't pass me the ball. And if you do pass me it, expect me to knock it on. And I just focused on the obvious things. But yeah, it was a challenge. But like that's just a clear example of basically how we were just pushed into it. And it was like, you're going to be fine. And we were.
And then it obviously built your athletic kind of stamina and endurance and your speed. I imagine you learned how to run fast on the rugby pitch.
Yeah.
And what age did you represent Team GB for the first time?
I represented them I went to my first World Championships in 2017. I must have been about 18. I think I was 18.
And how did that feel the first time you represented Team GB?
Yeah, it was it still is probably the best championships. It was in London as well. So we had my first championships was home in London, and I don't think I realized the magnitude of it until I was there. And it was sort of like, it's all the external noise that really makes it so much bigger and so much special. I think the kit, when you first get your first like Team GB or Great British kit, it's like the only thing you wear for the next 4 months. And then like just having my friends and like my school teachers come to this competition, which I was at, was just super special. And it's kind of one of the things I wish you could relive. Your first senior championships is just, there's nothing really that beats it in the sport, apart from the games. The games actually do beat it. But when I first made the team, it's an honor, and everything is so special and new that first time round. It's one of the best experiences. Yeah.
So how did that feeling compare to being at your first Paralympic Games in Tokyo?
Yeah, so that was also something else which I now probably take for granted. And I think Paris will be even bigger. So the Games is it's so hard to explain unless you've been in the cycle. So I remember growing up and everyone talks about, I've been training 4 years for this. It's the Olympic year. And you're then in the cycle, and that is really the only thing that matters. And before I'd gone to Tokyo, like a lot of decisions are made around when the next games are, not like what's on that year. And then you go to Tokyo and it is just tenfold what you've ever done before, especially on the Paralympic side, because we don't have the same media pool, the same coverage, the same support and fans of the Olympic side. When at the Paralympics, you do have that. It is then just like so much bigger. But not only that, there's little things like the village, the multi-sport, all of that, and the fact that then you're going for that is actually Team GB or Paralympics GB, just seems so. Well, it doesn't seem, it is so much bigger, and it's so special. But not only that, because everyone at home knows about the games, everyone is actually like, oh, Zak's going, that's actually really cool. Whereas people don't know if I've got a world champs this year or a European champs this year unless they're like closer to me. And I feel privileged now in the sense that Tokyo was COVID, because it was so special, but also dead. There was no one there. Now I get to experience it again, but it's like next door to us. And we get to have all the crowds now at this time.
Yeah, and they're saying it's going to be a bit like a kind of home games for us, aren't they? Because we're going to have so many people that can just kind of nip across from the UK.
Yeah, it's going to be super special. I think in Tokyo, my family and like my closest family members would have made it, but now people are a Eurostar away. We're going to have schoolmates and other mates coming, and it's it's going to be really special and really. It does, as you said, it does feel like a bit of a home champs, even though it is across the pond.
Yeah. And the fact that the Paralympics is every 4 years, how do you deal with the pressure to perform at that event when you know that if things don't go your way, you have to wait a whole nother 4 years to try again.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because we train 4 years for basically either 10 seconds or an hour, depending on what event I'm doing. And it's so much work. It's 20 foot, like our job and what we do doesn't really have a stop time, whether it's what I'm having for dinner or what time I'm going to bed. It's like constant work. And the as you said, all of that just builds pressure. But I think I was taught by my coach early on in my career. He was like, in ways of dealing with pressure. And for me, it's just flipping it. And it's more, he was basically like, nerves and excitement are the same feeling, but it's the way you perceive them. And that's always resonated with me for all of these championships and competitions, that actually, if I'm nervous, I'm just excited. And at every chance, I'm absolutely bricking it. I'm so scared. I'm super nervous. But then the morning of the competition, I am so excited. And once I get out there, it's the most enjoyable competition of my life. And it's weird, because that pressure, I don't think I have trained myself to be able to deal with this. I don't think I have been taught specifically well. I think just me and myself enjoy it. And I'm so grateful for whatever wiring that has happened, that when we actually get to the big high pressure environments, I enjoy those high pressure, and I actually think I perform better. And because I think I've done that and performed well at championships, now I have that confidence. It's like hard to knock. And obviously stuff happens, but I welcome those sort of experiences.
Yeah. Have you had psych support to help you get there? Or is that literally just naturally ingrained in you?
I do have psych support, and they have always helped. But to be honest, I had the same feelings in 2017 when I was just a kid turning up, and I had the same night before, couldn't sleep, 2 days before, like wasn't hungry, and then day of the competition, just like, this is super exciting. And I think it's sort of, there are things which I think people were just ingrained with, whether it's like talents in certain ways. And I like to think that one of the things I was just born with was the ability to like just perform under pressure and actually enjoy that side of the sport.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about resilience and grit on this podcast. And I ask my guests if they think that they are resilient people. And it sounds like, what you're saying is kind of like a deep resilience, deep grit you have at competition. And I wonder, do you think that any of that has come from growing up with a disability?
Yeah, 100%. I think the most deep way of looking at what I deem my disability to do is really has handmade me who I am. There was our visual impairment has been with me my whole life, for 25 years, and it's never been easy, and there's never been a day where I probably wish I couldn't see the way other people see. And especially growing up, life was more challenging and harder, and I was blessed to have a lot of support and a lot more opportunity than other people with disabilities, but still had to adapt my life. My life is completely different to someone that can see. And that means you're constantly having to adapt and overcome and find your own way through challenges. And I think that sort of like almost constant adaptation and constant sort of finding your own way through your life has made me who I am. And I couldn't be more proud of that. And I couldn't be more proud of how my disability sort of crafted that and made me who I am. And I genuinely don't think I'd be the same person if I could see. I think I'd be a completely different person because of the amount of experience it gives me.
It's so interesting because with athletes, we do pressure training, don't we? So we try and prepare them for big competition by putting them into pressurized situations in advance. Yeah. But that's kind of what you're saying you've done in your whole upbringing. You've done your own pressure training.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's similar. I think everything that we've done has been taught me how to adapt. But there's some things which like pressure is you can't create pressure, and there's only certain environments that like bring that out. So I think although I may have not had that pressure growing up with a disability of like performance and like you have to like be ready for this thing at that time, it's taught me actually how to handle things when they go wrong, or when I have to adapt quickly. And then that's actually what pressure is difficult for. It's adapting under pressure when there's like the stakes are high. And luckily I was born with a disability that meant I had to adapt a lot of my life.
Yeah. And the stakes are high when, like I said, it's every 4 years.
Yeah.
And I don't think people know how hard you guys train in those 4 years as well. And that you're having to maintain this super high kind of level of excellence for that whole period. Like you said before, even as much as what you eat. And there's not really much downtime in those 4 years, really, is there? Am I right in saying you have a hobby and you're quite into your music?
Yeah. You can see my decks behind me here.
Yeah, I did see them. I was going to ask you though, if you think that is it DJing you do?
Yeah, although it has been more difficult in recent years with the sport.
What, because you're too busy?
Yeah, and mainly playing house music at like clubs at 3 a.m. and training at 10 a.m. doesn't really work.
So I was going to ask if your music complements your sport, but it sounds like not.
Yeah, I would actually though still wholeheartedly agree with you. I think you've hit the nail on the head. This sport is so all-consuming, more so because it's athletics and because this sport is a sport of such small margins where we're like, if you look at a 1% improvement in the elite athletes, that is often them performing world record or championship gold medal distances. Just a 1% increase in their performance is massive. And it's because that is all we're trying to strive for. It's so intense. And as you said, if you're looking for a 1% increase, you can't really have it's small margins on things that can go wrong, especially in my disciplines, which are power to weight ratio. So diet is super important for me and possibly the most challenging thing I've had to be disciplined on. There's also, like, as you said, there's the sleep and everything that goes with this. And through my earlier career, it was music and social life that really helped me find that balance. Because it's so easy if you're doing that every day to burn out. And even if I don't have my music is as prominent as it has been when I was like producing and also DJing more regularly, there's other ways which I find that balance, whether it's I actually quite enjoy sort of the videography and photography side, or just a way of switching off. And I've always spoken about it in my career. I've done loads of interviews about sort of the balance. And the problem with athletics is it's so independent and so high pressure. If you have all your eggs in that basket and then you have your injuries, it can be so demoralizing. And finding a balance of the sport and also something that you're doing outside of things is so healthy, and actually I think can be better for your performance. It's just difficult to find that balance, especially in Paralympic and Olympic years, because you're just knuckled down on everything else. You're like, I've got no time for anything else. But you have to make time for yourself to relax and actually take a step back sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's so important as well. Like you said, your athletic career can be taken from you at any time.
Yeah.
And you need to have other things to go to, don't you? But also, you're going to grow up. And at some point, you're going to retire due to becoming too old.
Yeah.
And it's great for those athletes to have another passion. Because I find working in sport is those athletes that don't have other passions that really struggle when they retire from their sport.
Yeah, it's. I think it's dangerous. I think it's. It can be great when it goes well, because you feel like you're probably the most committed and you deserve this, and that's everything that you've given in your life, and you should be on that podium and you should win it. But then, unfortunately, I've learned that's not the way sport works, and you can turn up to a competition having given it everything for the last 8 months and tear your hamstring again. and then you're just back to square one, and you think everything's so unfair and sport is so unfair. But actually having those passions when you are injured gives you something which you can constantly work towards and constantly do. And I've got numerous other athletes and numerous other friends who have had passions which they can actually still pursue and still develop when they're injured. And I think that is such a mental break from being injured that sometimes it can help you get through those tough times.
So as well as music, so as well as having music as an outlet, do you have any other specific strategies which you've used over the years which have helped to drive you to where you are today?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because a lot of these comes from experience. So I've had my career was kind of like really fun and like everything had me going really well until sort of Tokyo. And then Tokyo year started really well. And sadly, then I did my hamstring 6 weeks out from Tokyo and caught COVID and couldn't really get that same form back. And so although I performed well, I was as disappointed as I would be this year to not walk away with a medal. And then since then, I tore my hamstring and was out for a whole year. And then I came back, and in my second comp back, I tore the same hamstring again. And I had like 12 weeks before then from a hamstring tear to get ready for World Champs. And luckily, I managed to turn it around and win that medal at the World Champs last year. But I was in such a bad mental state for that whole year because I was just so negative. I was just like, this is just not fair. This is like, why am I doing this? I'm not enjoying it anymore. And I wish I'd had those coping mechanisms that I have now back then. But sadly for me, I only learned through experience. So this year when I got hurt, I was able to actually be like, look, last year you handled that terribly. Like I was not jumping well the whole year because I was just so stressed, so anxious, and not really enjoying what I was doing. And I managed to turn it around at Worlds and compete and do well. So I took into this year basically just to try. I said I would be unfazable, and that is a lie. I am still very, very fazable, and things really get to me. I think the only thing I've learned now is to have more reality checks of like, take a step back, breathe, take 2 days off. All you need to do is just do something that makes you happy. Go see a friend, take your mind off the sport, get out of this training bubble for 24 hours and reset and just chill out. And that's the thing that's really helped me this year with my knee injury, which turned out to be more significant than it should have been. And also performances. I've performed twice this year. I'm not happy with them, but I trust that I'll be ready, and I know I'll be ready. And last year, those performances would have put me in a bad mood for a month. And now I'm just like chilled. I know I'm in good shape. Timing will come and I'll be ready come Paris.
So you're able to trust the process.
Yeah. And I've been saying I've been trusting the process for years, but I think I'm only now beginning to grasp what that actually means.
And you say that's come from reflection and from experience, but has that come from kind of any help from other sources as well? Has anyone taught you that?
Yeah, I think that's come from mainly training partners. I'm so lucky to be surrounded by some of the best athletes in the world that I train with day in, day out. They're like a constant source of like motivation. They inspire me and they support me. And a few of them have really helped with that sort of side of the sport, and also my coach. So really my tight-knit support group of my training partners and my coach are really the ones that have helped me learn and helped me become the athlete I am now.
Amazing. Final question, Zak, I like to ask everyone. If you could go back in time to when things were at their toughest, so like you said, when you're in secondary school maybe, and things were really, really challenging due to your visual impairment, what do you wish you could have told yourself as you were going through those hard times?
Oh, it's a very good question, because there's part of me that's like, everything that I went through made me stronger, but I think I could have handled situations better. And I think the advice that I'd give myself would be, I think I would say focus on the short term and what you can do, because I think my biggest issue was developing these huge issues in my head and being like, nothing's okay, everything's terrible. And realistically, staying centered and staying present was beneficial. It was just focusing on what I can do. Tomorrow I'll wake up and everything will be a good day, and we'll focus on the next day and the next day, and don't focus on sometimes the bigger picture, because that can be so daunting.
Yeah. And I suppose that's really important as well for you to remember at the moment, because like we've mentioned a few times, the Paralympics being every 4 years, but actually it's not helpful to think of it in that way, is it? It's thinking about every day of training, enjoying every day and getting the most out of yourself every day.
Yeah, 100%. And I will still have those days where I will start to panic and I will start to become stressed and things will become too much. But luckily now I feel like I have the right strings in my bow to hopefully handle that better.
Yeah. Thank you, Zak. Where can people find you if they want to know more?
Everything really for me is through Instagram. I have never really touched Twitter. So Instagram, if you want to come and follow my journey to Paris, it is Zak Skinner 1. And yeah, I'll be on there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Zak. Thank you for talking to us today. We wish you all the best in Paris and beyond. And we can't wait to follow your progress the end of August, early September at the Paralympic Games, and good luck.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great to chat.